All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I hope everyone's doing well. Can everybody hear me all right? Welcome to our August hub call. For those of you that this is your first time visiting, thank you very much. This is something we do every month, where we bring together from across the state, Democrats, and have the opportunity to hear about issues, to talk to candidates, to do a Q&A and get an update on what's going on in our party. For those of y'all not familiar with it, this originally started as an effort that was being done by Senator Mark Pryor and some volunteers to address people's interest in what's going on. And I guess it's been close to a few months ago. I said 6, 8 months ago, maybe. We, as a party, took this on when it started to be bigger than he could do with a volunteer team, and it's been a real success for us. It allows us the opportunity to meet monthly, to hear from candidates, but also to hear from folks from across the state, to talk about some things. I'm very excited about what we've got going on this evening. We have the opportunity to hear from some experts in education, and both from those of y'all that know April Reisma, who is with the Arkansas Education Association, and as we all go back to school, this is our back to school special to talk about education policy, to talk about public education, and also the Learns Act and the education freedom accounts and what that means, and the impact it's having on Democrats and on families across the state. So we're going to do that. We're also going to hear from Diana Gonzales Worthen, who represents House District 9 up in Northwest Arkansas. She is also an educator. We had planned to also hear from Cassandra Mace, but she was not able to join us this evening. But we're excited about the chance to talk about education in Arkansas and what we've got to do to ensure quality public education for kids going forward. And I'll let you in on a secret. That's elect more Democrats. That's what we've got to do. And then we have a chance to hear from Ed Guzman, who is running for Senate. And he's going to talk to us about some stuff that they've got going on and some plans that are happening up in Sebastian County, up in Northwest Arkansas. And so we go to the next slide. Before we get into that, I'll very, very quickly want to give an update. Myself, our Vice Chair Janie Cotton, and our Finance Director Christina Mullinax, we were last week had the fortune to go to Austin and participate in the Association of State Democratic Committees meeting in Austin, and then that dovetailed into the Democratic National Committee meeting. And so just a very quick update on a few things that came out of that are of some interest and some national interest. One of those, and this is on a personal level that I'm very happy about. Through some coordination and some work that we did, we have been able to gain some resources here for the state, and that should allow us the opportunity to, for a temporary period, bring on someone to focus solely on voter protection as we go into the election, to assist in what we've got to do to train those poll workers, to coordinate with folks across the state and how we can ensure we protect the vote, and to get folks to ensure they have the opportunity. And so I'm sorry, I did make a mistake. Johnnie Roebuck was also at the DNC with us, our National Committeewoman. She was there as well. I was reading names across the top of the screen and forgot to mention Johnnie, but yes, she was there with us as well. But we were able to we were able to gain some resources that's going to help us in our efforts to protect the vote here in Arkansas. We're very excited about it. And I always tell people, if you don't think that your vote is important, then you should ask why Republicans are trying so damn hard to take it from you. And that should tell you how important it really is. One of the other things that came up, and it's probably been something that people have seen in the news, is that the DNC approved the schedule and the calendar for the early voting states. And those are, South Carolina, then Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Michigan, and Virginia. That is different than what has been done in the past. And, obviously everyone has an opinion, everybody has thoughts. But one of the things that comes out of that schedule, even though it is different than has been done before, it was done that way for some very specific reasons. One of those is it provides an opportunity to test candidates early. As y'all know, we expect a fairly large field of candidates and Democrats that are interested in running for president. They're going to throw their names in the hats, their hats in the ring. Sorry. And what this does is it assesses their viability in some key battleground states early, two of those being Nevada and Michigan. And then also in that early window, it features competitive down ballot races with swing voter populations in New Hampshire, New Mexico, South Carolina, and Virginia. And so that's a little bit different. It also offers a comprehensive test that we will, in doing it this way, and it's a comprehensive test to reach out to voters that really make up voting blocks that in many cases we as Democrats need to focus on. And what I mean by that is that this change in the calendar, it puts these candidates in front of 4.6 million Black voters. That's an increase of 2.8 million from previous calendars. It puts them in front of 4.2 million Latino voters in the early states. That's an increase of 2.4 over what had been done before. It's puts them in front of Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander voters. Doubles that number. It puts them in front of 370,000 Native American voters, and that's an increase of 280 over what it had been. So these are voters that we want to engage and we want to get the assessment of candidates and how they're supported. And so that's what this calendar does. And one of the other things it also does is pretty important is that early in the race, it allows candidates an affordable opportunity. South Carolina, like Arkansas, is relatively cheap media market. It allows them to assess that. The same with Nevada, and it puts them into states that, in a couple cases, South Carolina and New Hampshire being examples, are geographically compact. So there's an awful lot of reasons why this calendar was done the way it was. And I just wanted to provide y'all an update as to why that was done and the implications going forward as to what that'll look like in 2028. Next slide, please. One of the things I do want to announce, and this is a save the date, but very soon we'll have availability on tickets for this event. We are holding a rally and dinner. This is and our featured guest for that is going to be Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. It's going to be on the 1st of October. We're going to have it, in North Little Rock. This is a less formal event than maybe we've had in the past. So, and you can tell that because it even says Blue Jeans on it. And our focus is going to be more of a rally atmosphere, eat a little bit of barbecue, maybe listen to a little bit of music, and then have the opportunity for some of our statewide and federal candidates to talk, culminating in Governor Beshear talking. This is one of the things that is very important as we go forward. I think from a national level, everyone acknowledges that all roads to the White House are going to lead through the South, and the new Southern strategy that the DNC has is focusing an emphasis back on places like Arkansas. Y'all have seen that in recent times where, obviously we were very fortunate to have our former vice president come. We had Secretary Buttigieg not too long ago. Governor Beshear was in Northwest Arkansas. Now he's going to be back. And I expect y'all will see national level Democrats coming. because people are beginning to understand that places like Arkansas that maybe they haven't paid as much attention to as they should have are very relevant. And we've always known that, but it's great that they're gonna see that. So we'll have Governor Beshear here for this event on the 1st of October. Everybody mark your calendar. Next slide, please. And a couple of things to just set conditions as we go into this education discussion. This is the data out of an article in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and this has a lot to do with what we're gonna talk about. But as I go around the state and I talk to people, particularly people in rural areas, I hear a lot of frustration and I hear a lot of concern about our public education. One of the things I do hear from people is that those schools in rural areas are impacted the most by the lack of funding and the change in how funding is allocated. And I also hear an awful lot of parents and grandparents who tell me that they're angry that their tax dollars are paying for, essentially, they're paying for already enrolled private school kids to go to school in Central and Northwest Arkansas. And as you can see, these are the schools that receive the highest expenditure of that money. And so it's pretty telling where those are located and those amounts. And so this just kind of sets the baseline for the discussion we're about to have. Next slide, please. And also, this is one of those other things I want to talk about, and that comes down to accountability and transparency. It isn't just that we're allocating public dollars into private schools, but we are also not demanding accountability, and we're not demanding transparency into the education provided and the way that education is being administered. And this just, again, sets conditions for the discussion that we're about to have. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to the president of the AEA. And she understands and knows this subject far better than I ever could. And I'm excited about the opportunity to hear from her and for her to, for us to start our policy discussion. So April, ma'am, if you would, please, I'm gonna hand it over to you. I'm going to even go on mute so I can't.
Yeah. So I did want to say something before I introduce myself and the thing that a few weeks ago, I was blessed to be invited along with about 50 other labor leaders across the United States with Hardy Merriman of Project Nexus. And so what you'll see in Arkansas, we have been trained in election protection, and we did do several things planning on what will we do if, an executive order goes out election night for martial law, different things like that, like things that could actually happen. So we're working with the AFL-CIO and other labor leaders across Arkansas to make sure that we have folks at the polls to help with protection and with making sure that folks are able to vote. And also not on that day, but beforehand as well, and to make sure that we have some peaceful demonstrations and that we have peacemakers also available to squelch any issues. And so I just want to let you know that we are ready and available to assist if you have those kind of plans as well. So moving on to what I'm here to speak about tonight. My name is April Reisma, and I'm currently proudly serving as president of the Arkansas Education Association. But in my real life, I'm a special education teacher, and I am employed by Robinson Middle School right here in Little Rock with the Pulaski County Special School District. And so I've been teaching since 1992. I took a little break to work for the post office, realized why they call it going postal, and came back to teaching. And so I do have a lot of experience in education, and as president for the last 3 years, I have been called on to give my opinion. Unfortunately, not by lawmakers, or the majority, I should say, of lawmakers. And I have gone ahead and given that opinion which is based on fact, which I'm going to present to you tonight. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. So what are school vouchers? You know, we call them lots of different names. And here in Arkansas, we call them our freedom accounts, right? Education freedom accounts. But they're vouchers. That's what they are. They're scams. Publicly funded scholarships that allow families to use a portion of funds that are typically allocated to public schools toward tuition at private schools, including religious, secular, and alternative options. And currently there are 23 voucher programs in 15 states, including Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, with an estimated right now about 350,000 voucher recipients nationwide. And if you are not aware, here in Arkansas, this year we have 54,000. So you look at that, 350,000, and 54,000 is a big chunk of that here in Arkansas. And the allocated money is already not sufficient for these. And we'll see that in some future slides about some growth. So if you go on to the next slide, please. This shows you when they first came with the LEARNS Act in 2023. You know, I'm not speaking to anybody that doesn't know this, but I'll just mention it. Decades trying to keep vouchers out of the state of Arkansas. And finally, they had the right mix to be able to get it passed. And of course, hiding it in a 144-page omnibus bill, which included raises for new teachers, was a sure sneaky way to do it and pushing it through fast. In that first year, of course, they tried to gradually bring it through. We only had 5,000, right, at 37 million. But the next year, it doubled. But the cost tripled. In 25-26, we went up to 44,000, and look at that cost, more than tripling. And you'll see that it's about 17,000 homeschool students, and this year we have about 23,000 homeschool students. And we don't know what the cost is going to be because 54,000 have been approved, but 57,000 have applied. And that was before the cutoff. So there is a cutoff on that. So we know it's not going to go higher than that anyway. Our current governor has stated that she will fund whoever applies. One of the things that we advocate here at the Arkansas Education Association is to have a little bit of accountability. Would be great, especially with our homeschoolers. Currently, there is none. And if you take an EFA, you do have to take a nationally accepted test, but it's not the same test that everybody takes. And let's be honest, these are homeschool students taking them at home in ideal conditions, right? And we don't even know if it's the homeschool student taking the actual test. It doesn't really get mentioned much because I think that we want to be careful about not offending folks. But when I first started with online testing with college and things like that, I had to go to the library to be monitored by a test administrator to make sure that I wasn't cheating, right? And they just don't have that kind of accountability that we need to have. And so we'd really love to see some legislation that to shore up those restrictions and what homeschool students and their families need to report, especially with these growing numbers. Now, I'm going to say that all homeschools are bad, but I want you to think about it this way. A child goes to a school and goes to one teacher who's an expert in science, and then goes to another teacher who's an expert in ELA, and then another teacher who is an expert in math, and then yet another teacher who is an expert in social studies, and so on and so forth. It's difficult to find one person who would be an expert in all subjects to be able to truly give a child a well-rounded education. And we know it's just not our academia. It's also our arts, our sports, making sure that a child truly grows up well-rounded. Takes a lot of responsibility and a lot of accountability. Next slide, please. So what are the issues? These are, there's so many issues, but I did bring them down to 5 that I thought were the most important, right? A major criticism of our vouchers is the diversion of public funds away from traditional public schools. And because public funding is typically allocated based on enrollment, when students leave for private schools, even though a majority of them were already in private schools, let's just talk about the ones that actually are leaving. When they leave with those vouchers, the districts lose the money while the fixed costs like building maintenance and teacher salaries remain unchanged. So this is a main drag of money from our public schools. We've seen the questionable academic impact in other states, Louisiana, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. They have many studies that have shown that the voucher program participants do not outperform their public school peers academically. And in some cases, they were worse, right? Especially in math and reading. It's very difficult to measure when we have different sources of testing and making sure that they're, you can't, measure apples to oranges for sure. On the access and tuition challenges, voucher amounts frequently fail to cover the full private school tuition, leaving families to pay the difference and effectively limiting choice to those who can afford the additional costs. Now, I'm well aware in the state, and you probably are as well, when the EFAs came into existence, many of our private schools increased their tuition, and lots of private schools popped up that weren't there before. The fact that the first year we had 111 private schools in this state and one out of state that were eligible to receive these just astounds me, but it's so much more now because they just keep popping up. And I know you mentioned earlier, Marcus, about the public funds going to fund the private schools, but really what it's going is to line the pockets of the private school owners, right? We're just making folks rich off of our public tax dollars. Limited accountability and equity concerns. We've mentioned a little bit about that. They're not always subject to the same accountability standards as public schools. There's gaps in transparency, oversight, and protection with students with disabilities, English language learners, or special needs. I'm really concerned with the waivers of our federal funds that are have now been approved, because now that those funds come in without any strings attached. And we really need to be watching how the administration uses those, because we will see discrepancy and we will see segregation again. The voucher funding channels those to the religious schools, and admitting institutions raises concerns about the church-state separation and inclusive access. And our students in poverty, our Black and brown students, will suffer, already have suffered. You mentioned earlier about those schools in our rural areas already suffering, where we have that provision where folks from out of state can come in and take over if it's a D or F school. And it's very concerning. And let's look at that final slide here. I need to wrap up because I'm already over time. So looking at our public school funding, the overuse complaint of our public schools are failing really doesn't compute at all when we have never been fully funded, right? Mm-hmm. To match the national average for per student public funding, we'd have to increase by $4,000 per child. Mm-hmm. Just to match. Arkansas is one of the lowest funding levels. Oh, I spelled funding wrong. Look at me. In the nation for English language learners. Only 21% of our Black students in Arkansas attended A or B rated school, compared to 53% of our white students. And the Special Education Task Force in 2016, which our executive director was a part of, stated that we needed more money, and we never made that happen. In fact, this task force report has been wiped from the electronic world that it lived in, and it's still collecting dust on the shelf. Just to wrap this up, public education, we really need help in the state of Arkansas, really, quite frankly, across this nation. And the only thing that we can do to correct these issues is to make sure that we do fund it fully, but also make sure that those funds are appropriated correctly, and to make sure that our public tax dollars aren't lining the pockets of those private school entities. And I really appreciate y'all having me on tonight.
Ma'am, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I appreciate this. And that is an awful lot of information condensed into a very short amount of time. But thank you very much. I know that there'll be questions that people will have. We will do questions at the end if that's all right with everybody. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And I am, in keeping with our discussion with educators, I'm going to turn this over now to the representative in our House of Representatives for District 9, Dr. Diana Gonzales Worthen, who is also an educator and also is working the policy and legislation side of everything that we can do to protect public schools and protect our kids and provide them the best education that we can. And so, ma'am, I'm going to turn it over to you. April, thank you very much. And we'll talk again in here in just a second. Thank you. And Diana, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here. And yes, I am an educator, 38 years, starting my 39th year. Have had the opportunity to be a secondary science teacher along with an English as a second language program specialist. And I currently, for the last 19 years, I have been working under 5-year grants with the U.S. Department of Education in providing professional development training for in-service teachers who are really wanting to increase their skill set so that they can serve kids who are learning English and also serving kids who are from different cultural and language backgrounds. We also know that there is a major teacher shortage, especially when you have diverse school districts across the state. The Springdale School District is the largest in the state, and we have the most languages spoken in the state. And we do not have enough teachers that can actually communicate directly with parents of English learners and the like. And so what our program has also been doing is we have a Grow Your Own program where we have bilingual, bicultural paraprofessionals who are serving in the school system as teacher assistants, instructional assistants. They're helping the teachers side by side. But no one had really ever asked them, do you think that you might want to one day become a teacher? And well, we asked that question several years ago, and now we have been able to produce about 31 individuals that had started off as paraprofessionals, and now they are practicing teachers. The majority of them are bilingual English Spanish, but we also have 2 that are English Marshallese, and we also have 1 whose family were Cambodian refugees. And so we really are going to be needing, once this grant runs out, we're hoping to be able to find additional funding that we can take a program similar to this across the state. That has been my work. I have been blessed to be on the education committee. And one of the things, because of my background in not only in public schools and working with teachers at pre-K all the way through 12, and then also in the higher ed system, I have the ability to be able to see and have had those experiences when legislation comes up, and also to be able to ask plenty of questions so that we vet these bills that come before us that are not going to be, they're not going to make a good impact in our communities and across our state. One that comes to mind was when we had the bill to do away with computer science as a graduation requirement. And I never thought in a million years I would be really trying to help that bill die in committee, but it took 3 times, and finally, after enough questions, we were able to, have a majority where no, this is not going to move forward. But there needs to be more of us that have that capability. As April was saying earlier, we have never really funded public schools at the full amount. As a freshman legislator, I'm learning how this entire process works. And the last 3 adequacy studies, this was the study that said, Arkansas needs to fund its public schools. They need to be equitable and they need to be adequate. Well, the last 3 cycles, every 2 years, there are surveys that are completed by superintendents, principals, and teachers. And invariably, the last 3 years, what are they needing? They need more money for special education. They need more money for paraprofessionals serving students, high need students. They need more money for those students who are high need that require a lot of one-on-one assistance. They also have mentioned that there's not enough money to fund operations, maintenance, transportation. You can go, just as a side note, at the, I want to say beginning of summer, May, June, just looking in Springdale, and I'm sure that this was, I had talked to some other superintendents, but just looking at the job sites of the school districts, we had 19 plus instructional assistant job openings for special education. And then we had several special education teacher positions. And of course, science and math we still have shortages in that, just like everybody else does across the state. So we have a lot of work to do. And um, it astounds me that here we have these surveys that are given out every 2 years, and we're seeing the same things that the school districts need, but they're not being addressed. The funding at the state level has remained flat. There isn't an increase across the board in all categories of spending for public schools. For cost of living adjustments, the amount of money that is spent is based on the previous year. So schools that are growing and growing by leaps and bounds, they have to figure out where they're getting the money to have that extra teacher because they have enough students to have another classroom, etc. So when a school grows, that's great, but when the funding doesn't match the growth, that puts school districts at risk, and they have to figure out and scramble where they're going to get the money. Keeping that in mind, we also had, there was also a very big need. Again, this was in the top 3 in terms of what superintendents are saying, that we really need to have more mental health services in the schools, school safety. And then we had some unfunded mandates, for example, with dyslexia. Great. Every student needs to have, that's been identified as being dyslexic, someone has to administer the exam to determine if that student does have dyslexia. But so that's one part of it, the testing and paying for that, but then also the teachers that would be trained in figuring out how they can best help that student who is dyslexic. And then you add on top of that, if they're an English learner, or if they're categorized in special education or 504. So there's layers upon layers, and none of that was funded. So essentially, we have a lot of work to do at serving on the education committee. What we have been listening to reports, et cetera, to come in, and we're supposed to enter and submit our recommendations for adequacy. Which areas do we need to increase in order for us to have an adequate education and equity for every student? And when I say every student, we also want to look at how we define when we talk about students, because we have a lot of students who have protected classes, but they're not always receiving all of the educational support and resources that they so deserve. So we do have a lot of work to do. We part of what we're going to be doing, as far as I know, several of us, State Representative Denise Garner, and also Representative Jesse Magruder, Representative Lincoln Barnett, we have been in the education realm, and we all serve in the education committee, and we have been seeing a lot of these things and are working together to, help to make those recommendations. So just to give you an idea, we will be recommending that instead of a 1 to 500 student teacher, 1 to 500 students, one per for all of the categories of spending for schools. 500 is the number, when in fact the average school has about 447. So kind of reducing that number, and then taking into consideration the geographic location. Every school district in Arkansas, whether, a rural school district does not look like a district that's in a city or a suburb. And there are just a number of things that we really need to pay attention. Not everybody is the same. Not every school district is the same. And so we're looking at increasing the amount of money for reducing class size. For example, I'm not going to go through all of these, but overall, reducing class size for kindergarten right now, it's 1 to 20. And it really needs to be lower than that, based on research, 1 to 15. And if you think about it, when you have students from all backgrounds, walks of life, and students that are included in the classroom, then that number, if it's really large, it is tough for that teacher, to work with everyone in the classroom unless they're trained to differentiate instruction. But at the same time, some of the students really do need to have that extra instructional assistant in the classroom. So we're looking at reducing the class size for kindergarten, for grades 1 through 3, 4 through 12. Also increasing the number of SPED teachers, because of all of the need for mental health resources, increasing the number of school guidance counselors, nurses. We have been on this ongoing battle of we're not paying our nurses enough. And so nurses, and providing them with a nursing assistant, for example. We need more mental health specialists and social workers in the school. This is everything that the superintendents, and also we have heard from principals and teachers alike. Something that we're considering, because community health workers, that was a new piece of legislation that came out last year. And it would be awesome if we could figure out a way how to use community health workers in partnership with the public schools. So we're going to be recommending that as well. As I mentioned before, instructional assistants, we definitely need them across the board for special education and for English learners. I've already mentioned the operations and maintenance and transportation, and the English language learner. April mentioned that we're one of the lowest paid. We pay $384 per student, and increasing that to $768 per student. We've looked at our surrounding states, and all of them pay so much more per student than Arkansas. We also are looking at increasing the amount for professional development, just because we have the need for teachers to have more professional development training when they're serving English learners, for example, or special education, or students with dyslexia or autism. We're seeing more and more of that. And after school programming, the Arkansas Out of School Network, they had a 3-year grant after COVID, where they served over 100 sites. Were doing after school and summer programming, and we actually passed a bill last session, and there's been a study since 2011 that we need after school and summer school programming funding, but it's never been funded, so we're going to be requesting that as well. And then the last thing, as we all know, there's such a dire need for childcare. There's such a dire need for our kids being kindergarten ready, and so that they can be reading on grade level by third grade. We've all heard that, but we don't have enough pre-K classrooms. So we really do need to pay attention to early childhood. So we're going to make that recommendation, and maybe that can be part of the funding formula. It never has been, but if we're wanting to serve every student, every single student in Arkansas deserves the best education possible, then we have got to fund it adequately so that we're equitable across the board for every student. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you. And she talked so much about all of the amazing work that they're doing in the legislature. She also didn't say she is running for reelection and needs
Yes.
everybody's help.
Yes. Thank you.
She is running in one of what's going to be a very, very tough district because, for those of y'all not familiar, Diana flipped that seat in 2024, and after, was it her fifth time, I think, running?
Fourth.
Fourth time.
Yes.
And I say all that because Republicans are going to push back hard on that particular seat, and so she needs your help. I know if you look in the notes, there's a little bit about her campaign, and it's so she said all that, and she didn't even say, hey, and also I'm running and need your
Yes.
help.
Thank you. Thank you. I tend to forget that. I get caught up with the work. But yes, you can find me on Facebook, Diana for Arkansas, and my website, Diana for Arkansas. And I'm all about strong schools, strong families, and a strong community, Springdale.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm now going to hand it over. If you go to the next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to Eduardo Guzman, who is running for our state senate in District 27. What we want to do is give him a chance to talk a little bit about what he's doing, but he is also putting together a plan to bring folks together, coming up to getting headed into the election to rally in Sebastian County, and give him a chance to talk a little bit about what he's doing and the plans forward going with that and all the things that are happening up in the Fort Smith area. And then we will go to a little bit of Q&A before we wrap up at 6:00. So Adam, I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, fellow Democrats. Thank you for having me on this call tonight. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you. So if you've been following what's happening on the ground in the River Valley, you know that the tide is turning. For too long, the political commentators in Little Rock looked at Fort Smith and Sebastian County and treated us, I believe, like an afterthought. They assumed this region was entirely out of reach. Well, I'm here to tell you, Fort Smith is in play and the River Valley is ready for change. My name's Ed Guzman. I'm the Democratic candidate for state senate in Fort Smith, running to unseat Justin Boyd and to bring Fort Smith's voice back to its people. So in an effort to seize the moment around the increased civic engagement in our region, our campaign is doing something that hasn't been done in the region for a very long time. On Sunday, Fort Smith Convention Center, we are hosting a massive campaign rally called The River Valley Has a Choice. We're bringing together over 30 local, county, state, and federal candidates under one roof, from our city leaders and quorum court JP candidates to legislative and statewide candidates. The entire Democratic ticket will be at this event, and what is likely to be one of the largest political events in the state this year. So when we first started organizing this, some people said, why are you trying to build an event like this out in Fort Smith? And my answer is straightforward, because Fort Smith should have an event this size. Our working families deserve to see a unified ticket showing up for them and standing shoulder to shoulder and proving that we are building a longer table where everyone has a seat. We are not going to cede a single inch or a single vote in this region. Fort Smith is reclaiming its position as a civic and social anchor in the state, and we are ready to lead the state into a new era of political change. And nowhere is that fight more urgent, I believe, than around public education. Thank you to April for speaking with us this evening and for all the work she's done around education in Arkansas. An Arkansas that works better for all of us is an Arkansas that fully invests in its public schools, in its teachers, and in its students. Education is a bedrock for our local communities in the River Valley. And when we underfund our public classrooms or divert tax dollars away from rural and working class school districts, we undermine the future of our kids and our economic engine for this region. Every child in Fort Smith, in Greenwood, in Mansfield, and across the state deserves high quality public education and well-paid educators in safe, modern schools, regardless of their zip codes. And so that's why we're organizing so hard on the ground. We aren't just running a political campaign. We're working to build a movement that shows people in every corner of our region that this November we have a real choice at the ballot box. Fort Smith is doing its part. But to keep this momentum surging across the River Valley, we need the energy of every single person on this call. And so I'm asking for your support and for your help. I hope that you can amplify and even attend the River Valley Has a Choice. There's a Facebook event called The River Valley Has a Choice. You can also look on my social media at Guzman for Arkansas, guzmanforarkansas.com to learn more. And we have a sponsorship structure that has allowed auxiliary organizations, civic organizations to partner with us. I'm a proud member of the Hispanic Caucus. They have joined us as a sponsor, and actually Maritza Munich, who is the secretary of the caucus, will be co-hosting the event with Representative Jay Richardson, co-emceeing. So we're building a larger table for our Spanish-speaking neighbors here in the River Valley. The Young Democrats of Arkansas have joined us. The Sebastian County Democratic Party, the Crawford County Democratic Party, Gravel and Grit, other civic organizations, business owners, and local candidates of all parties have come together in support of this event. And so I would ask for your support too. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. But thank you again for the time and for the opportunity to host this event.
And thank you so much. I think it's a great idea. There's a great opportunity to bring people together. Who would have thought if we said this just a few years ago, who would have thought we were going to put, hundreds, if not 1,000 people together in Fort Smith to talk about Democratic politics. So I think that's awesome. A couple of things when we answer questions. We're going to questions now. We've got about 10 minutes. I'm sorry we don't have more time. But there was a question earlier about getting contact information. If y'all look in the notes that have been posted, contact information for all three of our speakers tonight is listed there, and that way y'all can get in contact. I'm really quick going to read. So Lisa Birmingham had asked, has there been any studies on the impact of forcing, I'm assuming speed means special ed programs, to move the majority of special ed students into co-teaching settings without true review of educational, personal, social, developmental needs of the students? This movement began in 2021. I'm going to push that one to you, April, or to Diana. That sounds like it's more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so there have been, and unfortunately, we've got a big push towards trying to move special education students into ALCs, which are alternative learning centers, instead of trying to deal or trying to help. Deal, I hate that word. To help those students really, instead of to single them out. And as a special education teacher, I am against the push towards moving the students into the general education classroom unless they're ready for that. There is a thing called least restrictive environment that is a federal mandate in the IDEA law. And it's being completely ignored by those that are in a position of authority. And they are not making sure that our students are in their least restrictive environment where they can actually learn, participate in a classroom, and be able to grow and thrive. And forcing all students into a classroom without one, the general education teacher being prepared to be able to do it. And two, not making sure those special education teachers that go in and are co-teachers adequately prepared to be able to be in that situation. I remember I was working at Sylvan Hills Middle School when it first started, and I was not in my resource classroom anymore, being able to take care of my students. I was in the general education classroom and considered a co-teacher, but not involved in the planning whatsoever, and not involved in making sure that the students as a whole were able to learn. And it was not a good situation, and it continues to not be a good situation. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some pockets where they're doing well, but they are few and far between. So those studies are showing that we do need to do something different, but unfortunately, those that are in charge are not making sure that that is being taken care of. It's going to come to a head at some point in time, and it's not going to be pretty.
Thank you.
Diane, is there anything you wanted to?
I just wanted to add that I had the opportunity and I learned very much. And for my career, had the opportunity to co-teach with the special education teacher. This was in Texas, in Plano, and we did plan together. And I learned from her; she learned from me. And there were times when she would, have the lesson there in front, lead the lesson, and then I would join, and vice versa. So it was awesome because both of us were in the classroom and we were serving all the kids. And so when it can, I mean, it can work, but it does take a lot of training, to do that. So it is possible. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing any, but all right. If we don't have questions, can we go on to the calendar? Takes a second to pull it up. There we go. All right, just a few upcoming events I want to point out, and I want to read them all to you, because y'all can, as one of those dyslexic people, I will say y'all can probably read better than me. But we've got a lot going on coming into, and what we've got laid out. And you can see in our upcoming events. I do want to highlight one that's not listed here, and that is a special election, 15 September in Senate District 1. Don't forget, we do have a special election, and Mayor Tamika Butler is running in that special election. That's a special election primary that ultimately will be the general election on our general election day. So just don't forget about that. As we continue forward. All right. And again, our those days of action that you see, those are opportunities to volunteer and focus into some of our most competitive races across the state. That 1 October one you see there in Benton County, we're excited about that chance to get up there and connect people from across the state with folks in Benton County in those races. And if you've got anything that you need to see our calendar, this is the link. The other thing I will say when I talk about our calendar is that by the time we talk next, we hope to have launched our new website, which will have updated functionality and capabilities, especially around our auxiliaries and our county parties, and your ability to access information and for us to coordinate. So we're working that. We've got about 2 more weeks in the rebuild of that, and we expect to have that completed and relaunched on our new website by the time we all talk again. If you've got things to submit to our calendar, there you go. And in our next hub call, we're going to talk We're going to talk labor. We like to have a theme for all of these. This one, education. That one will be labor, associated with our Labor Day holidays. So we will have opportunity to talk to our labor leaders and then some of our candidates on the 15th of September.
Ooh, do I get to be on that one too, Marcus?
Maybe so. Maybe so. April and I actually got to go with some labor leaders and shoot skeet not too long ago as
That was
part of
fun.
their skeet shooting event. And I always like to brag about this. I more than quadrupled my Republican counterpart's score in the skeet shooting. So, you'd think Republicans would be better with a gun, but also, don't forget, we've got 77 days until the general election. That's not a lot of time for all the hard work that we've got to do, for all the voters we've got to contact, and the candidates we've got to support, and to drive people to get out to the polls. The momentum is at our back right now, and we have got incredible opportunities in front of us. We just got to stay focused and continue to talk about our message about how we're doing everything we can to address the concerns Arkansans have on healthcare, education, on affordability, and all those things that we know that matter to our neighbors the most. So next slide, if there is one. If there's not, then subject to any questions or issues or concerns, thank you all so much for your time this evening. Thank you especially to our speakers tonight. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate all you're doing. And our candidates that are on here, don't forget to support our candidates. But also I always say this, God bless our teachers and everything that they do. That the work you take on is incredible. And thank you also so much for everything that you're doing. There was one question, really, I will be very fast. Is there any recent polling to share? We actually were having a polling conversation about us from the party. What I have seen, and I think all y'all probably see the same stuff, and that is there's been a poll that's come out from Hallie Schaffner's campaign for U.S. Senate. There's also been one that has come out recently from Chris Jones, who's running here in the 2nd District. What I will say is both of those have Democrats polling very strong. But never let that mean that you take your foot off the gas. We've got to take that momentum that they're seeing now. We've got to again ensure that we are connecting with folks, that we're getting those people that don't turn out and vote to turn out. That's really the key, I think, for us. But I will tell you, yes, there is polling that we have seen that has been positive. I don't have the top lines in front of me. We intend on doing it focused into some competitive districts from the party perspective, and I know also there has been some recent statewide polling that's done not internal to the party, but different media outlets, and all of that. While it doesn't have a guarantee, it does indicate that Democrats are polling very strong. And then, subject to any other question, is there going once, going twice? If not, thank you so much. April, someone was asking if it's okay to get your slide deck. Is it okay if we share that?
Absolutely not a problem. So y'all can share it along with, I did get asked if my contact information could be shared, and yes, I'm okay with that as well.
Excellent. All right. So we're at 6 o'clock. Thank you all very much. Thank you for everything that you're doing across the state. Thank you to our speakers, and everybody have a great evening until we see each other again in September. Thank you very much.